sounds like it sounds like Bitcoin is almost more connected to nature than gold is, even though gold is like coming directly from nature. But Bitcoin is connected to energy, and energy is therefore really nicely connected to nature.
Yeah. I refer to it as digital mother nature, and with mining, it takes no prisoners. The network doesn't care. You're either efficient, and mining is a redistribution system of the units to those most efficient. I mentioned before, price drops, hash rate switches off, but it's the inefficient hash rate that switches off. So there are concerns right now, say for mining, which is if more mining comes offline and the security budget drops, but the most efficient miners stay online and then get paid more. So yeah, on the mother nature side of things, she's brutal and she doesn't care. Just redistributes the money units to those most efficient and those adding the most value to society because they're producing the most compute, thus deploying the most electrical infrastructure and monetizing it. On the mother nature side of things, I like to refer to Bitcoin in terms of the tree. The tree is the best analogy I find for Bitcoin, which is mining is that roots. A tree sort of is connected to two worlds, which is the ether, the digital side of the branches and the sweet fruit of Bitcoin, fragmenting and the transactional noise of the network, and the tweets in the tree, so to speak. And then the blockchain is like the rings of the tree. As it grows older and builds more layers, and that doesn't change, it just stores the truth of what happened to the tree, so to speak. And then you got the root system, which is all the mining and that energy source and the breadth of the network, so shall we say. But that goes on a bit of a tangent, but it's an interesting analogy to see Bitcoin and even the sort of relationship trees have to each other, which is the sort of mycelium network of the connections. And as we connect more in Bitcoin, just so much more is going to come from it. It's a very open statement, but truly, I think the more people that join, we're just going to see so many more things. That connectivity, such as the citadels all developing everywhere, they'll start connecting with each other through trade and pricing of goods and services in Bitcoin. So the analogy goes very far, shall I say.
It's as I said, with the inefficient ones, it's like Darwin, the ones that don't survive. Do you think there's a danger of centralization through miners because the best ones and the most efficient ones are winning, or is it more like the smaller ones, the mini miners at home, the heaters are kind of winning out in the quantity?
I think mini mining is a good educational tool. Because when you compare the amount of bit axes compared to industrial scale mining, it's a rounding error. As to centralization, you can observe the way that I have the network built in 6 parts, which is produce energy, produce electricity, the hardware, the hash rate, the blockchain, and Bitcoin in of itself. You've got the decentralization of where the mining's deployed. So by countries, power sources, off-grid, on-grid. You got the decentralization of the electrical grid in a sense. So you can look at how much hash rate is by nation, and obviously the majority is now US. But there's sort of there is this not power balance, but it's the hash rate deployed of the network is US side, but the source of production of the hardware. So it's almost like the OPEX of mining is in the US, but the CapEx of mining is produced in, say, China and all the chip fab nations. And there's all these dangers of back doors in the hardware, the mining pools, and mining pools are Bitcoin miners converting into hashers. They're not producing their own block templates, which is holding the destiny of, I fought to find the next block in the chain. I'm going to decide what goes in my block, which obviously delves into the discussion of the debate of at the moment in Bitcoin as to what should or shouldn't be in the blockchain. But I boil it back down to miners are paid not to attack the network.
How do you like the debate currently going on with the op return limit?
The op return limit aspect of things is so on one side you've got the miners who are the one side you've got the miners who are being paid to add more blocks, and then you've got buyers that are paying to go into those blocks. So what you have is this pricing system of the holders of Bitcoin. I want to pay the least to store my transactions forever online, and the miners adding those blocks, and the people in the middle are the nodes. So you've got this circular economy of data settlement with the data money, and obviously block production to earn the data money. But the nodes sit in the middle as the volunteers. And I did just put a video out actually referring to the sort of timeline of how we got to where we are today. So sort of looking at this debate, where we are today, where we came from the beginning, and where we're going. So from the node aspect of things, running a node from the Satoshi era was you produced your own blocks, so you're a miner. You stored the data of those blocks that you produced or others produced, and they sent to you through the network, the information, and you owned the data in those blocks, the Bitcoin. So ownership through your private key as a holder, storing the information as the sort of node function in of itself, and updating the node, updating the blockchain, shall we say. So all three components have now fragmented into different things. So holding Bitcoin got obfuscated and responsibility sort of handed off to platforms, exchanges, hardware wallets. What percentage are still holding their private keys? And then on the mining side of things, we went from CPUs to GPUs to ASICs, and it got inevitably harder. So the group of people actively in mining as a percentage of the network at any point in time has just gotten smaller. And so yeah, everything to do with your private key is fragmented off into this financial world of ETFs and all this sorts of things. And everything on the energy side, mining, its own multi-billion-dollar industry, fragmenting into its own sector, and the financialization of running a node, which is a mining pool. And you got the nodes in the middle, that all this money and energy is circulating around them, but their function has not changed. That we want them to store the information, the volunteers of the network, produce Bitcoin, miners producing blocks. They're not producing Bitcoin, they're getting subsidy, but they're producing block space. Holders having to pay to put in those blocks. But again, you've got those nodes in the middle that are sort of in the battle between those wanting to be paid to put as much in the blockchain and those wanting to pay. And so when it comes to today, where we are, is this fragmentation of all these different aspects, and node running's sort of been lost very much in the node running has been lost in terms of its importance to those that are, I'm going to hold Bitcoin in my ETFs and give it to Sailor and all these sorts of things. And then mining is, a lot of them aren't even running nodes. They are hashing, they're selling their hash rate to a pool, and then have to worry about the node running aspect. They are just producing hash rate and getting paid Bitcoin for doing so. So node running still remains that fundamental bridge between the two energy and financial worlds of Bitcoin. And the op return discussion is, do we impose more cost on the volunteers of the network, where mining is incentivized to get more efficient chips, but nodes are not incentivized in any way in financial terms, to add more storage space, because the blockchain file size, so to speak, is getting bigger and bigger at an ever increasing rate. If the idea of it being a monetary network transitions to it being in cloud storage. And there's no exact right or wrong answer here, because we're all trying to figure out what tomorrow looks like, which is subsidy disappeared tomorrow, but in 100 years' time, subsidy is gone. We're just depending on how much is put in blocks. So for miners, from the earlier discussions we've had, it's their energy is being priced against block rewards. So if block rewards are purely fees, the value of their energy is the fee market. Essentially, the fee market is the data settlement against their energy consumption, which also sets the value of Bitcoin in electricity terms. That if fees are really low, Bitcoin buys more energy from the miners, paradoxically. So with the fee rate low, the purchasing power, the amount of electricity you can buy with your Bitcoin, really increases. But if the fee rate is really high, miners are earning more Bitcoin for their energy use. So it's paradoxical, but buying the energy is more expensive. So Bitcoin transitions us away from a debt-based monetary system that has interest rates to determine the value of money and the cost of capital to borrow debt, and transitions us to an energy-based monetary system where the value of energy is the price of energy rises and falls in correlation to the fee market, which is an interesting way to see it, where at the peak of the bull market, where fees will be out of control, energy inputs will be more expensive because miners are earning more, so they'll rather monetize through the network versus selling it locally at a higher price in terms of Bitcoin. So that's where I see us in the future. Now, as to today, if blocks are empty and there's a capacity aspect, that if there's already the 1 to 4 megabyte aspect of storage, if that's empty, that velocity of fees and energy circulating in the network is less, and the more circulation between these two worlds, the more hash rates deployed, which more energy infrastructure is deployed, which is that physical side. But again, the nodes in the middle are fronting all of this cost in terms of the data side. I see that sort of resurgence of all three functions of mining, running a node, and holding your own private keys, your Bitcoin. If we reconnect those three like it used to be, so to speak, back in the day, I think if both three sectors sort of had more interconnection, I think, yeah, I honestly think that there'll be more nodes if people are actively participated in all three, because there's a lot of people, I'm sure, they've bought a mini miner and they go, oh, now I want to run my own node connected to my mini miner into my own wallet, and they're connected to all three functions again. So that's education, truly, is the solution. I didn't answer your question as to what I think of the op return thing. I wouldn't say my knowledge in the deep blockchain technicals are fully there. I'm just sort of using my knowledge of the understanding of how the different layers of energy, compute, and finance interconnect, and what that looks like in the future. One argument could be that if blocks are empty, the way the difficulty adjustment is a regulator for, if there's more blocks, raise the difficulty. Could the difficulty adjustment be a regulator for the amount of arbitrary data that goes in the blockchain by the nodes observing how empty or full blocks are, and raising or increasing and decreasing the arbitrary data limit, so that if blocks are empty, but yeah, it still delves into that sort of discussion of, is it strictly monetary, or is it to be, what price would you pay, what price should you pay to store information online forever, that's what the nodes offer, but they're not paid to do it. But if a lot of nodes were mining, running a node, and holding Bitcoin, they have a justification to continually buy more storage space because they're mining and they're holding their Bitcoin as well. Doesn't quite give you an answer, I don't think, but it's just, I'm trying to look in the future, trying to look in the past, and find some sense of where we are today.
Yeah, it's a hard one. I also haven't fully grasped where I and we should stand these days. For me, with every change in the Bitcoin network, it should always be the arguments on why we should change something should be extraordinary good. So the status quo should be defended as good as possible, and any change should have a really good argument why we should change that. That's because I think Bitcoin doesn't live from constant change in the network and the base layer. It lives from because we can rely on it, because it's a reliable system and we can trust it for the next 100,000, maybe even more than thousands of years. So every change for me is like we need to find a really good reason why we do this, because as most software developers know, you change a little bit here and all of a sudden there's somewhere else a problem popping up. So for me, it's just like, is there a good enough reason to actually change that? I haven't heard one, but I'm also not as good in deep in there. And I also haven't researched really deeply yet. But every change that gets kind of post, I'm like, okay, what is the real good reason to actually go ahead and do that? Because this not changing already worked 16 years. And yes, we have to change things. I think if we now stick with the Bitcoin code that it is there and we never change anything, I think Bitcoin will fail. There's just future developments coming that we need to change some things. But it has to be a really freaking good reason to change something, not just like, oh, like the code gets a little bit more efficient. Thank you for watching this video. This was only a snippet of the podcast. And if you want to watch the full episode and get all of the context of this episode, you can click right here or here. Oh, maybe also here.